I asked Jeff today if there was a communication issue between who was going to record the cold open, and Jeff said, no, I think it was a communication issue. That seems to be where the Guardians are these days. They don't know if there's a communication issue or if there's a mistake of being young. We're going to discuss whether or not the Guardians can blame their mistakes on being young as they lost an ugly series to the Pittsburgh Pirates.
Tanner Bobby of the Guardians, and you're listening to Locked On Guardians.
You are Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Was that a communication issue, Jeff? Were you supposed to do the cold open? Jeff's he's not even gonna play into the answer. Jeff's like, yeah, it was no, I think it was a communication issue, Jeff. That's what you're supposed to say. I think it was a communication issue.
Unless they listen to the post game. A lot of people are just very confused right now.
This is true. Yeah, this is true. We'll explain that all in due time here on Locked On Guardians, because this is Locked On Guardians, your only daily podcast on your team every day. No confusion. We do show up here every day, no matter what. And we do a half hour on your favorite team, even if they frustrate you and they frustrate us. Jeff Ellis over there. I'm Justin Lada, host of shows for 8 and 4 years and 19 years of coverage of this team when it comes to the minors and lots of prospects. So we'll get into some trade deadline stuff later in today's show. Who may be available, again, explaining why the trade deadline might not be everyone's exciting spot in the season. We'll talk about Jose, whether or not he should have a rehab stint if he's going to rejoin the team soon. But Jeff, the biggest pressing issue from this weekend, especially on Sunday, was the Guardians and their mistakes that cost. I don't think necessarily cost them the game because they didn't do a whole lot otherwise, but it was certainly ugly to watch, and it's not going to help them. So we'll talk about that in the first segment. Today's show brought to you by FanDuel. Join all the action FanDuel. Play daily dingers. Make a free pick on who's hitting a home run this MLB season. Check out FanDuel for daily dingers. So really fun to erase the good vibes of the walk-off Bazzana home run Saturday, right? Because I was saying on Sunday morning, I was like, man, so much easier to wake up on Sunday morning after like a doubleheader's hard. The weather's been hot, rainy. The air is not healthy to breathe, which is always awesome. But you had a walk-off home run after basically 17 innings of offensive garbage, and you really just decided to throw that all the way on the side of the road on Sunday because you had 4 outs on the bases, base running. You played some goofy defense. Poor Joey Cantillo looked really good and got no defensive support, and anytime they had runners on base, they just did silly things. I think my biggest gripe, though, is yes, those are mistakes that you can't make, so it's annoying they made them. But, like, I don't want to take these things at anything more than face value because this is just words in a post game. But, like, Stephen Vogt answered a question, I think it was from Paul Hoynes, was like, oh, was there a communication issue between Arias and Patrick Bailey on that back pick at third? And Stephen Vogt goes, no, I think it was a communication issue. Okay. And then Zach Meisel asks later about, like, you know, is it sloppy play, execution, whatever? And
no, he characterized it as like sloppy work, and then Vogt.
It was sloppy execution. Yeah. Zach said
yes.
Yeah. Was it sloppy effort or sloppy he said it was sloppy execution.
Yeah. Well, he just called it sloppy one. He didn't give him a choice, and then Vogt was very, very wanted defensive. Everyone to know, like, it was not. It was execution. It was not the hard work. It was not. They weren't sloppy. They worked hard. They just
and
sloppy.
then he blamed other stuff on we're a young team. That's on coaches to coach up our players and talk to them, make them better. And he's talking about the fact they didn't slide into home plate a couple times, and then base running mistakes in general. And I'm like, those are things that, for the most part, I don't care if you're been in the big leagues for 10 days or 10 years. Like, those are things you probably should already know without having to be told, because you've been playing baseball long enough. Like, I assume, like, let's say Travis Bazzana, by the way, is probably the greenest player on the team at this point, right? In terms of big league
Watson.
Oh, I'm sorry. Khalil. Okay. So Khalil Watson, he's 23 years old. He's been playing baseball in the minors for what was his draft year? 19?
Was it all the way back in 29? Was it for some reason? He was
a high school pick.
Yeah, he was a high school kid. I can't remember the exact
2021.
It's the same year as all the other shortstops. Like, he was up there with
Yeah, so he's been playing pro ball since 2021. And, like, okay, he got picked off. And that happens. Guys get picked off, and he's a rookie, whatever. I'll I don't want to say accept it, but I can bite my tongue on that one. But like the issue between Bailey and Arias on the back pick, that's not a rookie mistake. That's a communication issue, which could happen. Kwan stretching the single into the double when you're down 4.
Trying to do too much.
Trying to do too much. And then
trying to do too much.
Bailey not sliding last night and on Saturday night, and then DeLauder not sliding on Sunday. They ended up winning Saturday, and DeLauder sliding or not on Sunday probably didn't affect whether they're going to win or not. But it's like, those are things you can't necessarily sit there and say, oh, well, we're young and we got to coach them up and make them better. Like, I understand Vogt's probably just covering at that point, but I don't know. Like, those are things you can't have those things in general. You certainly can't have them when you don't have Jose Ramirez in the middle of your lineup, and you can't have them when you're playing a team like Pittsburgh, who is carrying the best BABIP in baseball this year and is tied for the most runs scored this year. And by the way, had Paul Skeens pitching on Sunday. Like, you can't have that.
Yeah. I mean, they had their opportunities. Like, let's be honest. I mean, Cantillo pitched well until he didn't. And then he gave up some hard, kind of came a little unraveled around him. And then he came a little unraveled. And then you look at, like, they had their opportunities. They could have been winning and part of that signing into home the last 2 days is like, that's supposed to be on the hitter to, like,
the on deck hitter. Yeah.
We have this discussion all the time. It's like, technically, if you slide, you slow down. But in those situations, it's often not about the speed. It's about, like, avoiding the tag. So, like, having guys slide,
right,
they're probably safe. But, like, the players aren't doing their job in those moments. On top of, like, the guys not getting down themselves. I'm sure they're going to spend a lot of time in the next week going over all of that. But
that's spring training stuff, man. That's stuff that you should be doing in high school and college and in the minors. Like, I can't sit there and say that's just being a rookie.
I'm not saying it's being a rookie. I'm just saying that after the best ups, they're gonna have to go back and review it. But like the thing is, like, they had the opportunities here. Like, Paul Skeens, he's been a little bit mortal of late. That's not to say that he is not tough, but he has shown, a little bit of mortality in a few of his starts recently. That's why he's got an ERA of 3.43 instead of, the normal sub 2. And they had chances to get to him. They had chances to get runs on here, and they just, shot themselves in the foot. And, this Pirates team is an interesting offensive team. As you said, they have the highest BABIP in baseball by about 20 points. They have a lot of guys who I'm very curious to see if they can keep it up for the whole year. But, their offense is carrying them. Their starting pitching is carrying them. Their bullpen is a mess. Cleveland didn't do themselves any favors. Like, they won yesterday because they got into the bullpen because they had 2 games in a row. It was the double header.
And then,
then they got into a little bit of the bullpen. Montgomery's been honestly probably their best reliever this year. So that didn't help them very much. And by that point, they're already down so much. It didn't matter because, Alamon and Dion just, were like Alamon's pitched fairly well. Dion is just there to staunch bleeding. And he didn't do that, but, like, he's just there to eat some innings. Let's be real honest. It's great he's getting his opportunity, but yeah, that's where they are. And then, like, they the whole box score bingo of it when I sat there and added up, it's like should have had like 3 or 4 runs in this game. Instead, they had 1 because the damage, self-inflicted damage, and that's just what it comes down to. And yeah, it stinks, but gosh, I just get so tired of the seesaw of emotion from the fan base where it's like, this team's awesome, this team stinks, this team's awesome, this team's like, it's like, yeah, there's ups and downs. It's a long season. This was not the best series, but they just previously, we had the joy and excitement of sweeping the hottest team on the planet. Like, I still believe in this lineup. This team has still done a good job. And, we got to talk about when Jose is coming back, because it's something that kind of boggles here in my mind, both. But, they're getting better. Even if there's still a lot of things they can still do to get even more better.
Even more better.
No,
Jeff's son's teacher summer break brain.
They can get even. They can get more.
It's fine. The Guardians. The Gandhis. Yeah, the Guardians broke us. They broke your brain. They broke my pronunciation skills because this weekend. No, like, I understand it's frustrating to seesaw back and forth and not looking at the big picture. But I also, again, I think it's hard to excuse some of the mistakes they're making. You can't chalk it up to rookie mistakes and that other stuff. Like, we can go back to the Cooper Ingle forgetting how many outs there are. Like, I don't want to belabor that over and over, but like some of the stuff they're doing, it's like, these are not just rookie mistakes, guys. Like, these are things that you can't have. And I don't know who's to blame for all that, but again, this team can't afford to be doing that with a healthy Jose Ramirez, especially the version that we got, before in the first half. You certainly can't have it without him, and they got to clean that up first and foremost. Again, I think they miss Kai Correa. That's all I'm going to say. They miss Kai Correa and maybe Craig Alvarez as well. All right, we'll talk more about this weekend. We'll talk about Jose Ramirez, the trade deadline. Lots to still pick up on here. All right, baseball fans, you think you know who's going deep today? FanDuel is giving you a free chance to call your shot with daily dingers. Easy to play. You make your pick who you think is going to hit a home run in their game that night. So if you're right, you're going to get a profit boost to use on your next bet for a chance at extra winnings. Best of all, you can make a free pick every single day throughout the rest of the MLB season. Daily Dinger is another good way to stay engaged with every day's games. So if you're following your favorite team or keeping an eye on matchups across the league, every game should have someone capable of going deep. You'd hope so. And now is your chance to make a prediction before the first pitch. Out in Colorado, you've got the Nationals, so they hit a lot of home runs. Luis Garcia, James Wood, some dudes that can go deep out there. At the Athletics, I know Nick Kurtz is out, but they're playing the Diamondbacks. There's some guys in those games, too, with some bad pitching where I think you could take advantage. As for the Guardians, they're at home, and they are 1.5 run dogs to Joe Ryan and the Twins. That's just where things sit right now for the Guardians. Unfortunately, you're ready to play your games today. Join all the action at FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com to play daily dingers. Make your free pick on who's hitting a homer. Play ball and swing for the fences on FanDuel, an official partner of the MLB. And look, if you've ever tried to run a business, know somebody that has, you can see the frustration when you're trying to connect a bunch of systems that were never designed to work together. You really can't afford to have one app for accounting, another inventory, another for sales, and have none of them talk to each other. And that is where Odoo comes in. Odoo is an all-in-one business management software that brings every part of your business together in one powerful platform. So you got sales, accounting, inventory, marketing, everything is working for you in one place. It helps your team move faster, stay organized, focus on growing the business instead of managing individual pieces of software, because the best organizations know success is not just about talent. It's about having everybody work towards the same goal. It's true in sports, just like it is in business. The Guardians really need to get together, I think, and have everybody working towards one specific goal, and that's working on fundamentals. They've all got to talk to each other so the communication works perfectly. Otherwise, this is not going to work for the Guardians much longer. Great organizations win because operations matter, and that's why you should get Odoo. Try for free today at odoo.com/lockdown. That's odoo.com/locked-on. Keep the conversation going after the show by checking out the Everydayer Club. It gets you access to ad-free versions of Locked On Guardians on all your audio platforms. It also gets you access to a free or a private listener Discord where myself, Jeff are hanging out, as well as other Guardians fans, listeners of the show. And there's a Discord channel for every single show on the Locked On Network. So even if you're tired of talking about the Guardians, you can go talk about the Browns or the Cavs or the Bills. Will LeBron come home? All that stuff is out there on Discord as well. So go to LockedOnGuardians.supercast.com. Check the link in your show notes to learn more. And I believe you can still, for the time being, get a free 7-day trial for that when you sign up. So check that out. So the other thing I wanted to bring up about this weekend too, Jeff, was that, yes, I think there's still some mistakes that you can be upset about. Like, I know this, like I said, the seesaw back and forth is frustrating. And if people don't, I think it's okay to, in the moment, like, cause you and I text each other in the moment about the game at the time too, and frustration over this and that, or not understanding why this is happening. And then taking a step back and be like, okay, like people on Saturday were upset that Logan Allen pitched. And I was like, well, they don't have a choice. Like, Logan Allen had to pitch Saturday, because if they didn't pitch him on Saturday, they were going to pitch him on Tuesday, because they were going to run out of starters on normal rest because they don't have an off day till next week. That's just what happens when you have a cancellation. And honestly, the reason the Guardians, it's health, but also the fact the Guardians have only had 5 starters up until Saturday has as much to do with good weather at home as it does health. So there is that. So I get it. Like, in the moment, you're frustrated. It's frustrating to watch, Bailey and Arias stare each other down when they had the issue with the back pick, and it's frustrating to see guys not slide. They could have been safe. So I get that. Like, there's things you can be back and forth on, and they got to be better. Like, the reason they did so well against the Marlins before the break is because they executed, right? Like, they played good defense. They moved the runners over. They pitched. They ran the bases well. They didn't do a lot of those things this weekend, unfortunately. They got away with some of it on Saturday, thanks to the Pirates' terrible bullpen. I think the Guardians' bullpen is bad. Whew, that Pirates' bullpen is a hot mess. Like it's Cleveland air quality level of bad is what I would say. I think this would be a better extended conversation, Jeff, than today, but just very quickly. How much are you buying back in on Steven Kwan? Because he's back. He was back at the top of the order on Sunday, and Stephen Vogt won't say whether or not that's a permanent move or not, but it's very clear that this team is still it's still a much better offense, and Steven Kwan still means a lot to the success of this offense when he does what he's been able to do in the month of July.
So, and yeah, right, because it gives him one more capable bat, which is a huge thing with this lineup. But when you're looking, it's like he's not going to keep up this pace, but like just getting him even just close to average is a huge improvement from, where he was one of the 10 worst hitters in baseball. So it's huge to see him approach even average. Obviously he's been beyond that. I'm buying into a small degree, just because, his data, basically the only question came down to is I'm curious if he's changed his stance back, because he did have some stance changes. And then was his bat speed to the point where he just didn't have enough to be able to do anything with major league pitches. And, I got to look and see if the data's improved, because everything else surrounding it was solid. So there's a chance, and, having a better eye at the plate, walking more, that's just going to help, get you better pitches to hit.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for Kwan is if you look at his heat maps over the last 30 days, that teams started pitching him away. They didn't want him to have the ability to turn on the ball inside, which is what made him an all-star the previous years, is that anytime you threw a ball in the inside inner half of the plate, he got really good at picking on it and lining it to the gap or down the line, and sometimes getting it over the fence. Like that's what turned him into a borderline all-star and all-star those 2 years. And the teams decided, well, you're no longer going to get pitches on the inner half, and a lot of rolling over on those pitches this year. And now he has been comfortable to just bloop the ball to left field and slice the ball on the left field line. And 400 on base percentage the last 30 days. That's the hitter you love in Steven Kwan. Is he going to continue to have a 400 on base percentage? Of course not. Like that's still too good, but it's, if you can get 350, 340 on base percentage, Steven Kwan, and whether he's in front of Bazzana or behind Bazzana, that's going to make things a lot better for you if he gets on base between walking and just finding left field. And, he still runs the bases okay. Like I know he got himself in trouble trying to stretch a single into a double, but he's still a smart base runner. And then he had that safety squeeze he executed, which, by the way, Arias also scored on that, which was good execution. So they, in some moments, they did things today.
Arias reached base twice. He's one of 3 guys to reach base twice. But of course, their comments are about how he needs to get cut and how lazy he is.
Yeah,
that's always the first. Because he was totally lazy on scoring the one run they had. It's like
he made the right read on scoring on the safety squeeze, which is a play you don't really do a whole lot. So that was the one thing they did well in terms of the small thing. So if you get that version of Steven Kwan, and he's not going to have a 400 BABIP the rest of the year, or on base percentage the rest of the year, but if you can get, like you said, league average Kwan, and then Jose Ramirez playing against the Twins this week, that's certainly interesting. Tom Hamilton, if you listen to the radio broadcast at all this weekend, kept saying he would not be surprised if Jose Ramirez is in the lineup one of these games against the Twins this week. It wouldn't shock me that Jose doesn't go on a rehab assignment, but I'm also like, that's going to be interesting, because you bring him back off the injured list. We did this in 2019, right? And that was because he came back right before the playoffs. There were no minor leagues to be had at that point, and it was late in the year. You needed the offense. Learning, it's a pain tolerance thing at this point for him. So I don't know. Like I'm a little bit skeptical about how that's going to work out. But then again, I don't know. And maybe any version of Jose is better than no Jose.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a timing thing. It's the same thing we talk about when guys, it's just weird to me, because it's what we talk about with guys, why they have to go back with spring training and all of that other stuff. So when we're looking through all of that, it's just kind of interesting. I don't know. It's Jose, so you never want to doubt him, but it's just very weird to see that he would be at the be able to jump in with no timing issues.
I mean, DeLauder, it was a much less time missed, obviously, but DeLauder had no issues coming off the IL. He's been arguably their best hitter since he came back. Unless you want to say it's Austin Hedges, which is technically true, believe it or not. And then it's Kwan. So I don't know. Jose is special. There's not a lot of Jose's out there. I'm on the fence here. I'm like, I worry about it a little bit, I don't worry about it in terms of performance. Like, he's going to have timing issues. There's going to be things. He's not going to jump back in and be Jose. Then again, 2019, he hit a grand slam and a 3-run home run in his first two at bats, and then he didn't play the rest of the year. So maybe he'll be fine. I think my more concern is the pain tolerance thing. Like, is he gonna jump back in and play every day? Can he play 9 innings? Can he have 4 at bats? If he plays 2 games in a row, is his wrist going to respond? Does he need days off? I don't think, for me, it's not the performance and timing of it all. I think it's the pain tolerance. Like, the reason you send guys out on rehab assignments, I think, is to build them back up and make sure that their injury is healed and they can withstand.
I think it's also, like I said, I think it's that and the timing.
I mean, the timing is, I think that's just one of those things you say, like, you're accepting is going to be an issue. I don't think you can't necessarily say you can't worry about it. Like, it's just going to be there. I think overarching to me, it's the pain tolerance issue. Like, I'm willing to accept the timing issue. I'm just concerned more about the pain tolerance issue.
See, that's more of to me, that's pitching where they've got to build up and build the strength of muscles. I'm not as concerned about that. It's interesting. That's one of the things we kind of disagree on.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen often, but like with the hitter, as long as he's going, he's fine. Yeah, true.
Yeah. Chances are he'll be in the box this week against against Taj Bradley, and he'll have a 400-foot home run, and we'll be dancing our pants off. So I hope that's what we're doing at some point this week. All right.
I'm never wearing pants. I don't know what you're talking about. You just can't see it. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
And that's it for today's show. I'm
gonna need all of them ever.
I'm gonna need a new podcast partner because I've spent a lot of time with Jeff. That might have been too much time with Jeff. We'll come back and talk about the trade deadline, finding a new podcast partner, among other things. Stick around. I hate to say we're going to throw cold water on you, but I hope you're looking for a cold shower when it comes to the trade deadline. Jeff's not wearing pants, so the shower seems appropriate.
I mean, I'm wearing shorts.
Before we get back into today's show, it is time for the Everyday Icon presented by Stance. As the official sock partner of Major League Baseball, Stance knows that greatness is not built in a single moment. It's earned over time through consistency, preparation, showing up every day. And that's why each week we're recognizing one player whose performance embodies those same qualities. Today, let's take a look at Steven Kwan. Obviously, it hasn't been a great year for him overall, but he had 7 hits this weekend against the Pirates. Certainly did his part, big part of why they scored those runs on Saturday. The doubleheader won the game. Did his part on Sunday with the safety squeeze. Tried to stretch a single, no double. Didn't work out too well, but this is the Steven Kwan the Guardians absolutely need. The guy we know has been a multi-time All-Star in the past. So looks like he's returning to form as an icon again. The Everyday Icon presented by Stance. Check out the Icon collection from Stance. Premium comfort, performance, and durability designed for whatever your day brings. Use the promo code LOCKEDON at checkout for 20% off your purchase. Stance, the official sock partner of Major League Baseball. Learn more at stance.com. Hit the auto download button on your favorite podcast feed. Do it right now. Right now. Stop the podcast and right now go to auto download. So the show automatically downloads on your favorite podcast feed. And then go hit the bell on YouTube when you get a chance so you get notified of reaction videos to every game when the show goes live. And you can also get reaction videos to when trades eventually happen. Maybe, probably not. I don't know. I want to put this out here too. This is what's hilarious. So remember we had the whole debate, like you predicted the Pirates would trade the 34th pick to the White Sox, right? And it was like, oh, well, the Pirates are moving that pick so they can allocate that money to their major league payroll, right? They would rather use that, whatever. I don't know what the slot value was, but you're not going to get much for that. But today, this is Bob Nightingale, so take it with a grain of salt. You never know. But he said that the Pirates plan to be aggressive at the deadline, but only if they can acquire pieces without increasing payroll. What was the point of making that trade now?
Because they wanted to allocate about 2.7 million, I'd say total once all said and done with overage, to trades. And again, most of we just passed, today's game was the 100th game mark. So when you're looking at paying players, it's you're paying them by the time we get to the deadline, what, like 30%
of what's left?
It's
a third.
It's you can get a decent player for 2.5.
Yeah, exactly. And now they're saying, well, we don't want to actually add to the payroll. So again, I don't know what the point of that trade was, but the Pirates are still a terribly owned team. For all the people who want to complain about other stuff, the Pirates are still a weird organization. Some people didn't like today. I saw a Royals content creator. I wish I knew who it was. I can't name the top of my head because nobody had seen before, but they had posted a picture or a highlight of Lane Thomas and how he's been doing the last 30 days. And I went and looked and I was like, okay, those are good. I went to the Savant page. That looked good. I went to the Fangraphs page and I was like, all right, everything here looks like the Lane Thomas you would want. And I said, well, maybe this makes sense for the Guardians. Interdivision trades are hard. This is a rental. The Royals are definitely sellers. I was like, this might be one of those things you can get done. And then I had responses, of course. It was like, oh, this can't be the move. They have to do other stuff. Like they have to get bigger pieces. And I was like, bookmark this tweet, but like come back on August 4th. I think there's a good chance Lane Thomas is one of like the best 2 or 3 hitters traded at the deadline. Like Taylor Ward is probably getting traded. All the Orioles I think they just swept the Astros, which not good for the Cleveland, by the way. But maybe the Orioles trade Taylor Ward. I think for sure Lane Thomas is getting traded. And after that, I'm like, who's the next best hitter that gets traded at the deadline? Because like I'm struggling to see who it's going to be. Like there's just not going to be a lot of like I'm sorry, there's I forgot what year it was. JD Martinez got traded from the Tigers to the Diamondbacks, and he went off and had like 20 home runs from like the trade deadline to the end of the year.
He went cheaply though at that point. Like that was not an expensive trade.
But a guy of that value just is not traded.
Mason Miller, like I mean it's relative because he's
hitters.
Yeah, but hitters. It's like we saw him a year ago, but like the year before that, it's like Jack Flaherty, you had Randy Rosarina, Jazz Chisholm, like these, depending on how you want to look at them, are various levels of hitters. It was 2017 was that trade for Dewal Lugo, Sergio Alcantara, and Jose King, which I was just kind of at the time, I was like, wow, I was surprised that's all it cost. The trade deadline is often much ado about nothing. It's very low. Like I know people are like, big trades happen in the offseason for a reason. It gives teams a lot of time to it's easier to navigate. It's easier to figure things out.
More teams are involved. There's
more teams. You can, you've got a full season of data on prospects. So it's easier to like know who you like, who you don't like. Like the big trades, like shit, probably, the other big hitter that I still think probably gets traded is Ryan Jeffers, just because the lack of catching out there and because he's a free agent to be. And the Twins are, we'll face them this weekend. Yeah, they're in contention, but it's also kind of the approach with teams like the Twins and the Guardians that like you can't let these guys hit free agency. You have to get a value in trades. Maybe I'll be wrong. Maybe they will hold on to him and then they'll just accept that they'll get a first rounder. And maybe that's better than what they'll get offered. I have a hard time believing that with the lack of catching in baseball. But we never see big things. And I have to point out, I know people get mad. The Pirates don't have money to trade at the deadline. And this is pointed out by, I'm going to get his name wrong, great Pittsburgh reporter who has his own site, Dejan Kovacevic, brought up in the...
Oh, yeah.
So, they gave $12 million to Marcell Ozuna right at the start of camp, and that was the last of their money. So they went and made that signing, and that $12 million is why they can't afford to be, at the deadline now. And it's like, Ryan O'Hearn has worked out great for now. And like I said, there's a few guys on that team that the BAPIP's coming for him, and it's going to be interesting to see when and where it happens. And sometimes you can go a whole season without that affecting you, but it always comes eventually. It's like Father Time. It's undefeated. So Cleveland's in a weird situation. They can absolutely get better. Like, I tweeted out on, I think Friday night, it's like my dream deadline is Ward and Morajan. And I had multiple people be like, dream more. I'm like, guys, that's a good deadline. If you get one of the better left-handed relievers in baseball and you get a guy. And honestly, it's like, I'm willing to also take on Lane Thomas because all of the data supports, like, this is the Lane Thomas that, as I texted Justin, that we thought a year ago when you talked about him maybe making an all-star team. Like he's playing like that version right now.
Yes.
Like it's a low BABIP. It's good everything else. He's not I believe he's not chasing. Like it's a successful profile right now. So you just got to find ways to improve. Like it doesn't have to be, like people very foolishly. The two most foolish names I've seen all year was when Houston was really struggling. People were like, Yordan Alvarez. I'm like, Houston's not moving him. Like that doesn't happen. They're not moving off of their star. And then recently it's been Lindor. It's like, that's also never going to happen because the amount of money they would have to eat because he has one of the biggest contracts in baseball would then immediately make Major League Baseball veto the deal. So like, and you're ready to trade Janelle, Ralphie, and more to get them to eat more than half that contract because that's the way it would take.
Right.
No, that never made sense. If you're going to, like I said, right now the easiest thing to like go through and be like, okay, look at the Mets, Brooks Raley, Luke Weaver, go
rental, rental relievers.
And we talked about Oakland with Mark Leiter Jr. It's like you can find the rental relievers. Starters are going to be tricky. I think Kansas City isn't Bubic hurt? That's why his name isn't coming up right now. I think in everywhere it's Lugo and Waka, but those guys have control. And that's the other thing that like everyone looks past.
Correct.
So all of these teams, right? So Kansas City, San Diego, people really think Mason Miller is going to be on the move. Now, when the Padres acquired Mason Miller, people were probably like, why? They wanted him to be a starter. They thought they could convince him to try starting, and he said no. And I think that's part of the friction this year is they thought, we're going to turn him into a starter. That'll make him more valuable. He's the best reliever on the planet right now. So they might try to flip him because they're in not great shape. But the Padres aren't tearing down. They're going to hope to flip him for some pieces that can help next year. Same thing with Morjan. Like, it's like if you trade I was texting you, it's like to get Morjan, it's probably going to cost you something like Franco Alamon because then Cleveland gets, one of the best left-hand relievers in baseball and they get they love huge pitchers, which is what Alamon is, and they get him for 6 years. Like they can just slot him in and move on. So they're going to look to retool. Teams are going to look to retool. Baltimore isn't looking to, rip down to the seams. I mean,
they just signed Pete Alonso, right?
I know. Elias might get canned sooner than later. Like guys like that are not looking to shred. Like none of these teams are looking to really shred themselves. They're looking to trade guys who are in the last year of their contracts. It's a lot of rentals and then maybe like guys at 1.5 years or guys who have lots of owed money like Christian Walker, where it's 1.5 years, lots of owed money. And like, as much as I talked about Christian Walker at the start of the year, I just went recently looking, like he's been just league average against lefties. Like his production has dropped all year. He still would be an improvement. Don't get me wrong. Kyle Manzardo has been an absolute disaster. Like the high highs, low lows. I just can't take it anymore. The first month was terrible. Then he had 2 awesome months. Now we're back to terrible.
It's bad.
So it's like, I've been honest. And then Rhys Hoskins is just like, whatever.
Time to cut bait there,
but
if they don't have better replacement,
it's like Ralphie, I just kind of look at those parts and pieces, and it's like you got to find the guys that make logical sense. It's if you're looking at like who the top 30 hitters in baseball are, just move on. That's not who's getting traded. Like teams don't trade those guys anymore, and if they do, like a Shea Langoliers is going to get traded in the offseason. Like that came up because Oakland's trying to extend everyone, and Langoliers and Kurtz both no. Like just shut that down. They're both going to free agency, and it's like they're not going to trade Kurtz because he's got 4 more years after this, and Langoliers I think is 2 after this year. So it's like they'll revisit this offseason. But we're just not seeing. People get very mad about what doesn't happen. I think they'll make trades. Maybe I'll be wrong. We'll come back in a week, and I can sit down and be like, okay, I was wrong, but we'll see.
2 weeks
or 2 weeks. I'm sorry.
It's August 3rd or August 2nd.
Yeah, 3 weeks. So. I'll be wrong. And that happens often.
Yeah, well, same here. I think the whole point here is that, like, yes, I don't think you're right. I think you're right. Like, there just hasn't been a lot of movement at the deadline. There will be relievers available because there always are. They'll cost something. We were having another text thread about starters. We can get into that tomorrow, that theory. But the point is, when it comes to trading, like, just because you can't trade for, Yordan Alvarez doesn't mean you shouldn't go out and not make a trade anyway. Like Lane Thomas still makes your team better.
Incremental improvement is good.
Right. You don't drive on a flat tire when you have a spare in your trunk. Like you put the spare on, like just because you're like, well, it's not a real tire, it's a spare. No, you put the spare tire on because it helps. You don't drive on a flat. So find guys. There are going to be guys available, and it's going to be up to the Guardians to make those prudent deals and find the value and be willing to have a little bit of risk tolerance, because even a guy like Lane Thomas in division is going to cost you something. And I know Jeff had a good point about that we didn't get to today, but we can touch on more of that tomorrow. There's another trade, and I know Jeff wanted to bring up. We'll bring up tomorrow. So we'll keep talking trade deadline, probably till the trade deadline, honestly, and then we'll talk Guardians Twins game 1.
Yep, I have a bone nailer one to discuss. Thank you all for joining us. Rate and review, download daily. It helps, and go Guardians, go.